They're part of the scenery, especially in southern Germany, offering rest to wayfarers. The heart of a famous pilgrimage site, in a village close to the donor's property. Or in open country, nestling between clouds and fields.
My first impression or feeling is that it's beautiful. It's beautiful because it has such clean lines. It's pure and simple. Beautiful.
We've always believed in God, but I wouldn't say my faith was so strong that I'd have built a chapel. It wouldn't have occurred to me, but it was a promise. If you let my boy live, I'll build you a chapel. And I have my boy, so now there is a chapel.
I'm very devoted to Mary. Whenever I have a problem, I come to the chapel here and I always receive help. It's a source of grace for the whole area, the whole world, if you understand what it's about.
The Altötting Chapel is a pilgrimage site dedicated to the Virgin Mary, in the foothills of the Bavarian Alps. It's one of Germany's oldest churches, dating back to the 8th century. The bells ring out from the surrounding churches, all of them much bigger than the chapel, welcoming an endless stream of pilgrims. The chapel is visited by about 1 million pilgrims each year, not just from Bavaria, but from all over Germany, and even from abroad. Altötting calls itself the religious heart of Bavaria, but it's an international pilgrimage site.
Gegrüßet seist du, Maria, voll der Gnade, der Herr ist mit dir. Du bist gebenedeit unter den Frauen, und gebenedeit ist die Frucht deines Leibes, Jesus.
People come here to pray for strength, to help them overcome the hardships of life, or to give thanks for assistance received.
Heilige Maria, Mutter Gottes, bitte für uns Sünder, jetzt und in der Stunde unseres Todes. Amen.
A chapel is a little cloak, a protective cloak in the countryside, where people can find a bit of spiritual shelter. We call it the Chapel of Grace, and that says it all. A chapel of grace is a focal point, where God and people can come into contact. So the Chapel of Grace is a site characterized by great trust. That's the real hallmark, a place where great trust can flourish.
Wo großes Vertrauen so zur Blüte kommen darf.
Six masses a day are celebrated in the chapel, not to mention all the other less formal prayer services. Monsignor Ludwig Limbrunner is the priest in charge at Altötting, and he often says Mass here. But many groups of pilgrims travel with their own priest and like to hold their own services. Inside the chapel and along the arcades, more than 2,000 holy pictures. Some are centuries old, others have just recently been placed here. The pilgrims deposit them here in gratitude to the Virgin Mary.
Frauen, und gebenedeit ist die Frucht deines Leibes.
The votive pictures, as they are called, record the troubles that have brought the pilgrims here. The hardships of life, war, natural disasters, illness, and accidents.
Many come to Altötting because they know Mary is a great help to Christians. The votive pictures bear witness to that, so do the Mass intentions. They express confidence in the presence of God, in Jesus. People go on a pilgrimage because they know they are sinners. The traditional prayer is also on the new votive pictures in the sacred area. "O Mary, help! A poor sinner comes to you." And I don't know anyone who isn't a sinner. Even the popes come and pray in the Chapel of Grace because they know themselves. They need God's care and Mary's guidance and intercession.
The golden rose in the sanctuary is on loan from Pope Benedict, a sign of his special affection for this pilgrimage site. Next to it, framed in silver and gold, a Madonna and Child, the 14th century Black Madonna of Altötting.
So, sitzt. Wir haben morgen eine ökumenische...
Tomorrow we have an ecumenical service up here at our chapel in the fields, and the members of 3 parishes from various villages will be coming here, Protestants and Catholics. It struck me that one of the things we have in common is the liturgical colours. So that is what we'll focus on tomorrow. We'll be outside and able to enjoy the colours of the countryside.
Im Freien freuen uns am Farbenspiel der Natur.
A wayside chapel in the middle of the countryside, some 50 kilometres east of Heidelberg. Lots of the local villagers helped their pastor build this chapel. He didn't have the necessary cash. He only knew where he wanted to build it.
Ich bin hier früher öfters vorbeigekommen.
I often used to pass this way, and it was as if I sensed something here, that the site on which the chapel now stands is a special place. It touches you. We Protestants have our difficulties with wayside chapels because we have our churches, our assembly rooms in the towns and villages. And I was always a bit envious of the others. I thought, why shouldn't we Protestants also have a wayside chapel?
My doorbell rang one Sunday evening, and there was Pastor Moser outside. He told me there would be a meeting on the following Tuesday to discuss building a chapel. He said some students from America wanted to build a chapel and he needed professional advice. I'd known him a long time and I agreed immediately. I thought it was great that students had come from America at their own expense and wanted to build a chapel here in Germany. It intrigued me.
So, da kann ich jetzt mal raus an die frische Luft. Ich brauche mein Gesicht nicht verstecken.
I go every morning and light a candle. And when I'm home, I go 2 or 3 times a day. I like being here because I've got good reason for being here. And it pleases me that I was able to build it. It was very hard to get permission. I think that was a kind of test. Will Johann do it or won't he? One difficulty after another, and I overcame them all. And now the chapel stands, and that gives me a great feeling. It was because of the accident, because I'd promised.
A little chapel in Breisach near Freiburg. Here, at the foot of the Kaiserstuhl Hills, lies the home of one of the world's most successful families of acrobats. The Trabers can trace their history back more than 200 years. Their daring tightrope performances have made them world famous. Family means everything to the Trabers, also professionally. 2 daughters and a son continue the family tradition. But 6 years ago, young Johann fell from a height of 52 meters. Few thought he could survive.
Johann, this is your baptism.
Cute, wasn't I?
Your mother looks like she's come from a disco.
Young Johann performed on the tightrope from the age of 5. Since his accident, however, it's doubtful that he'll take over the family business. The acts with the motorbike and his father on the high wire were once routine. Now they're unthinkable.
Is that you? Really? That could have been me.
At 22, he climbed the mast that broke.
That was your birthday in 2006.
I turned 22.
On May the 21st, 2006, the Trabers were performing in Hamburg. Johann Jr., the star of the troupe, began his act. When he reached the top of the mast, disaster struck.
We were performing in Hamburg. The last show, and the mast broke. I climbed up to my boy. He was hanging there, unconscious, blood everywhere. I held him in my arms. I held him tight so he wouldn't fall any further. Then I started to pray. I said, if you let my boy live, I'll build you a chapel. I have my boy, and there's a chapel. That's all. A terrible time. It was hell. If you ask me, does hell exist, I'll tell you. Yes, hell exists, and we went through it. But now all is well. Much better than before.
Und jetzt ist alles gut. Viel besser als vorher.
Final preparations for the 2nd anniversary of the field chapel. Pastor Moses' dream came true. A professor of architecture in Chicago heard about Dankwart Moses' dream, an expatriate German, Frank Flori. He turned it into a student project. 12 young Americans designed the wooden structure and traveled to Europe with their professor to present their plan. 3 months later, they built the chapel with their own hands, in just 8 weeks, with half the village pitching in.
Wir hatten nur 3 Monate Zeit, alles zu organisieren.
We only had 3 months to organize everything. We had to find accommodation for the students. We had to buy the materials. The property had to be registered. We needed building permission. 1,000 things. And it's entirely thanks to the villagers that it worked out. The women made sure that the students got something to eat and somewhere to sleep. They took care of them during the whole construction period. And the building was completed on time.
Now they can celebrate. The young people, the villagers, and of course those who built the chapel. and those whose idea it was.
What you see is really a combination of not just us as the students working together, it's also the whole community being brought in. And it was to create a space that was a secular space that wasn't just for a particular Catholic or Protestant or whatever. It's to create a space that can really be experienced by everyone in general. And so we wanted to keep a very minimal structure, minimal orientation, and also something that, with the beautiful surroundings that we have here, we wanted to not really block it off. And so we've created these louvers that let the light in, and you hear the sounds. You're inside, you're isolated, and you can have a quiet time for prayer or reflection if you want, but you still are involved in the environment. You have the light comes in and the shadows and the sounds.
Eight o'clock in the morning, and the first visitors have arrived in Altötting. These Polish pilgrims feel remarkably at home in Bavaria.
We have a long journey ahead of us. We're on our way to Italy. And this is our first stop, here in Bavaria. We've come to see the Black Madonna in Altötting. In Poland, we have Częstochowa. We love the Virgin Mary.
Miracles have been attributed to the Virgin of Altötting since the late 15th century. 2 young boys drowned in the nearby stream in 1489. Tradition has it that the Virgin Mary brought them back to life. Pilgrims started coming here from all over Europe to pray to the Virgin. Back then, the chapel was no more than a tower over the present sanctuary. Larger churches were built to cater for the flood of pilgrims. A nave was added to the tower. Emperors and kings came to pray here. But Altötting has remained a pilgrimage destination of the common folk.
If you open yourself, you receive grace. This site is holy. Mary is a solver of problems in the Catholic Church, but I think she's more. She's for all Christians.
Pope Benedict put it very well. He said, "There are as many ways to God as there are people. Each person has a unique, individual path to God. And when I celebrate Mass in the chapel or lead the Rosary, it's wonderful to observe quietly what moves people, what words touch them. Each person experiences each word differently. You can sense it. You also see it in the religious articles they buy, souvenirs for themselves and for the people who have supported them with their thoughts and prayers. They ask us to bless these gifts. And you can sense very clearly that they presume or believe that there is a strength that comes from faith, and they want to show it without embarrassment. That's very beautiful.
Johann Traber dedicated his family chapel to St. George. That was also the name of the hospital where his son was treated.
This is the visitor's book. People started to write their thoughts here, and sometimes it's so heartbreaking what they write. Such beautiful words. It makes me realise I did the right thing in building this chapel.
Johann Trabe's son escaped death, but his world has changed completely since the accident. Now he thinks more about the meaning of life and death.
The chapel's great. I'm very happy about it. I often go inside and light a candle for myself when I'm going away. Because I travel a lot by train, I can't drive a car anymore, I feel close to God there. The only downside is that it always reminds me of my accident.
Young Johann suffered critical head injuries and multiple fractures, and recovered. He can't perform as he used to, but he still appears on the tightrope. The show goes on.
Now I only ride a motorcycle on the tightrope. I open the show. I ride along the rope and back. And the audience is always surprised. The things they say, they all think it's great that I'm up on the tightrope again.
There's a little church in Hamburg with a painting of God on the wall, and I had the feeling he was looking at me. I felt he was looking after me, that he would help me. That painting made such an impression on me that I'm convinced he knows of my existence. I would never have said that before the accident, but I say it now because it's true.
Das hätte ich vor dem Unfall nie gesagt. Aber jetzt sage ich Ihnen das, weil das so ist.
An old Bavarian proverb says, "The road in front of every house leads to Altötting." These roads meet at the famous chapel. Millions of pilgrims have trod these paths over the centuries. The last group on this particular day is 3,000 pilgrims from Passau, all members of the Federation of Catholic Women. It's an old tradition. Every 2 years the women make this pilgrimage and carry candles into the chapel.
It's important to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be the chairperson of a Catholic Women's Association. There's a much nicer atmosphere coming here together as we did today. Much nicer than coming here alone. I believe you can pray to God or to Mary everywhere, but it has a different meaning when you do it together.
When no one else is there, you can meditate a bit. It's very nice.
A cathedral is just too big for me. When there are too many other people, I can't concentrate on my thoughts.
The touching simplicity of this chapel on a hill. It has won many architectural awards, including one from the American Institute of Architects.
Lots of people say, "Where's the cross?" It's there, if you look. The chapel speaks to everyone who comes here with his or her own spiritual images. They can also find them here. And I think that's what makes it significant. Experiencing those images again in a place like this.